Now one side of this is going to get glued onto the neck. So we want one side decently flat and square. The bandsaw doesn't need to leave a perfectly flat surface. Not good enough for our gluing perspectives. But I'm just going to pick the surface I kind of want, and then I'm going to just put a little sand on the bench sander here. Don't need much, just enough to kind of take the irregularities of the bandsaw out of it. And then take a look at it. See if any touch-ups need to happen. Yeah, that's pretty good. Now, remember I drew on here a line that was 14 3/32, and then one line that was an 1/8 inch further than that. Now, I'm going to glue this heel block onto this neck, onto the second line, the one that's an 1/8 inch further than that. Because later on, we're going to then, once this glue is dry, we're going to trim the whole thing square with the table saw back to the 14 3/32 line. So we're going to glue a little bit beyond that, and then we'll cut it all off flush with the table saw later. Once again, I'm using this clear packing tape that I have on the workboard to stop the glue from drying on me. So I've cut this off square with the table saw. Now, I had trouble doing this. A couple things I did wrong, which I later corrected. First of all, I didn't clamp this to my T-square on the table saw as it was going through. So as it was going through the blade, it drifted a bit and the cut came up not square. Secondly, I forgot to check that the blade of my table saw was actually square to the table, which of course it wasn't. So even after I clamped it to the table, to the guide and pushed it through, it still came through in a slant. So I corrected that, but the net result is I've nibbled away a bit more than my 1/8 of an inch that I had allowed. But that's okay. There's a bit of a leeway in here. This 15/16 gap that was at the end, which later becomes a tenon to hook into the guitar, there's a bit of leeway there. It doesn't have to be 15/16. So mine's a little shorter. Mine's actually going to turn out to be 3/4. So that'll work as well. Just goes to show you there's no mistakes. Next, we're going to trim the heel block off to its final height, which is 3 1/8 inches down from the top. And I'm going to use the bandsaw for that, because the accuracy of this cut is not critical. Now the next thing to do is mark out where the edge of the fretboard is going to be, because it's all convenient to do this marking at this point. So I've marked, I've drawn a center line down the neck, and then here at the end of the fretboard, I've marked the width of the fretboard at the nut, which is, looking up from the table here, 1 11/16. I marked that on the side. And then up here at the 14th fret on a steel string guitar, it is 2 1/8, and I've made those marks there as well. And we'll just join those lines up, those diagonals, which indicate where the edge of the fretboard will be. Now if everything is relatively even and centered and square and all that kind of stuff, these should look symmetrical on either side. Happens once in a while. There we go. Okay, so the next operation we're going to do is route a channel in the neck to house the adjustable truss rod. This is a two-way adjustable truss rod, and I'm going to put the adjustable nut to be accessed through the sound hole. So it'll go down at that end of the guitar. The other end of the truss rod is going to, it should fit just about to where the saddle starts. Sorry, where the nut starts. So we're going to rotor channel that using the rotor. I've got an 1/8 inch bit mounted in my rotor on this little table. And I've marked this particular truss rod is 13/32 wide. So I've marked where it will go on the end here and adjusted my fence so that the first pass of this cut will cut the one side of it, and then we'll move the fence over and cut the other side of it. It's the depth of the truss rod cavity is going to be the depth of the truss rod plus a 1/16 of an inch, because after we put the truss rod in there, we put a thin spline of wood over top of it as well, just to lock it in. So that's what the 1/16 of an inch is for. Now I should have also mentioned that I've also put a line on my fence here to indicate where the edge of the blade is, and a line across the back of my neck here so that I know where the nut is going to be, so I know when to stop pushing this through. So after the truss rod channel has been cut out like that, the next thing to do is to cut this tenon shape out of the end. Now this is what will fit into a slot in the guitar body. The line that we drew on this that was 15/16 from the end, that's where we're going to cut back to, and I've already done it obviously. And what I did here is we have a 3/4 inch tenon which I marked out and cut in with the bandsaw, just like so, to cut that in straight up to the 15/16 line. Now, but what they call the cheeks of the shoulder here have to be angled slightly. So they cut in towards the center of the guitar neck, and that just works so that when this fits against the guitar body, the edges of the cheeks bite in good and solid to the edges of the guitar. So we angle it in a bit, and what I do to do that, I do it on the table saw, running through like this. But I made a small support, which is just a little piece of wood I got out, which is supports about 1/4 inch high, and all this is cut out so that it fits on the neck, like so, and hold that up about 1/4 of an inch, and that gives me a bit of an angle as I'm running this through the table saw against the blade to cut in those two cuts. And so I've done that, and that's what it looks like. Now I've taken and inserted the truss rod into my slot here, and I've taken a piece of, well, this is rosewood, but any hardwood would do, maple, ash, birch, whatever you have kicking around. I just happen to have a scrap of rosewood kicking around that I am going to use to make this spline out of. And this, you just make this so that it fits tightly into that slot on top of the truss rod. And when you're going to glue it in, now I like to use white glue. I use white glue anywhere I'm going to glue something that I might want to take apart later, because white glue, as opposed to the yellow glue, will soften easily with heat and come loose and take it out. So if you ever want to replace a truss rod down the road, I use white glue here. You don't want to restrict the movement of the truss rod itself, but you want to lock it in place as far as staying into the neck with the spline. So you only put glue along the edges. Try not to get any glue underneath, and it might actually glue the spline to the truss rod.